Welcome back to Bad Attitude C-10.
All right, guys, we're back and again dealing with my favorite nemesis, brakes. As y'all remember, originally the transmission I had was a 4L80 and I couldn't afford to get a trans brake put on it. So I had the brilliant idea of putting a rear and front line lock both on the truck to where I could use the front line lock to do a burnout, and when I staged the truck and wanted to get on the converter, I could actually lock the front and rear line locks at the same time. That would allow me to use my 1 foot on the gas pedal instead of having to figure out a way to go from the brake to the gas pedal. So John Goebel over at Goebel's Racing Transmission ended up contacting me, and he made me a trans brake for my 4L80 and went on ahead and went through the transmission to make sure everything was good. We have now gotten it back. The trans brake does work, so the rear line lock is no longer needed. So what we're going to do is we're going to hang on to the line lock as a spare. That way if the front one ever goes out, we have one handy. But the residual valve for the rear brakes and the switch that would make our brake lights come on and off, I had already put on a T off of the circuit beyond the master cylinder. So I need to put the brake switch either on the proportional valve or on the front of the master cylinder. So I'm going to remove that, and we're going to go ahead and get the residual valve back off and basically bag the rear line lock and have it as a spare. Looking back at the video when we mounted the proportional valve onto the master cylinder, which seemed to be a good idea at the time, the lines that hang down off the bottom and that loop back around from the line locks actually covered up part of the hole for the steering column. And going with the aftermarket column, it's limiting how much of a angle I can put the column in at. Instead of mounting my proportional valve on my master cylinder, I'm going to remove it from the master cylinder bracketry, and I'm going to mount it on the firewall to where it's out of the way. And instead of having all these lines hanging down and being in the way of the steering column and stuff like that, it'll just be all up against the firewall and out of the way. So what I'm going to do on my master cylinder is, instead of making more hard lines going from the master cylinder over to the firewall to tie into the proportional valve, I'm going to utilize some stainless steel 4AN brake lines. Now, I know a lot of y'all are going to be like, hey, hold on, flex, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, dude, we're talking 12 and 15-inch long lines. It's not going to be a big deal. I know a bunch of y'all are going to be like, hey, they're not DOT approved. Dude, they're pressure rated up to 12,500 PSI. The working pressure is going to be way, way below that. So to each their own. I don't care. I'm using them. It's my build. So wait till you see where you judge. So I picked up some 3/8 by 24 inverted flare to 4AN fittings, or adapter fittings, whichever way you want to say it. And they are from Russell. If you are interested, there is the part number. And I got them from Summit, and I think they're like $10 for the pair. This being a flared line, guys, again, I'm not going to use thread sealer or anything because we're depending on the flare to actually make it seal. We're going to go ahead and remove our proportional valve from the bracket. So we're not going to be needing these lines that are on the proportional valve anymore, so we're going to go ahead and take all those off as well. The bad thing is I spent all that time bending these crazy ass lines, and now I'm not even going to use them. It kind of pisses me off. Now, the cool thing about the Wilwood Proportional Valve is we had more than one output, so we did go ahead and plug this one. Right here on the end is where you can actually put a brake switch. So we had it plugged since we put the switch on the residual valve T. I'm going to go ahead and remove this plug and put the brake valve right off the end of the proportional valve. Before we put the brake valve or brake switch, pressure switch, whichever one you want to call it, I'm going to go ahead and put my fittings in. So these are going to be 3/8 by 24 inverted flare to 4A in. So again, 3/8 by 24. So these we're going to put on our end for both the front and the rear, and they are marked on the proportional valve. And remember, since they're inverted flare, we are not putting any type of pipe dope or sealer. Alright guys, with both our AN adapter fittings on, we're going to go ahead and put our brake switch, brake sensor, whichever one you want to call it, back on. And again, it's pipe thread, so we're going to go with a little bit of thread sealer, pookie, whatever the hell you want to call it. With that being done, I'm thinking we're going to go over here and see if we can figure out where we can actually mount this using some of the holes that we already had in the cab. Alright guys, I'm thinking I can use these two holes and mount this thing kind of like that. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we're about to give it a shot. I'm using 1/4x20 hardware, and I am putting the lock washer. And we're going to use some of the thread setters that we had installed in before for the line box. And we're going to repurpose the aluminum washers that were for the bracket for the proportional valve originally. So we can reach our adjustment knob. Now I'm going to use some 21-inch 4AN braided line. Sometimes whenever they make hoses and they crimp the ends, they get a little bow to them. So you can find the way that it normally lands. Since this one likes to land in that position, I'm going to flip it to see if it takes away from some of that bowiness. And actually I like how that lays a little better. My brake line that comes from the rear, I already had an adapter fitting on it that converted to 1/8 pipe, and I don't have one to convert it the other way. So now I gotta go and backtrack. I'm gonna have to put some stuff around real quick. Never have I ever had all these hiccups. This is crazy. Well, I think the easiest thing to do, if I take this whole fitting out, I can go back with the 3/8 inverted 4AN, and we'll run the soft line from here down. Alright guys, so here's what I ended up with. I ended up with the original adapter bushing that I had to have for the back brakes, because when I ordered my brake line kit originally, they sent the wrong one. So the fittings did not fit the 3/16 stuff that I had. So I had to bushing it down from the 1/2 to the 3/16, and then the 3/16 down to the pipe thread, and this is the 4AN. So instead of using the adapter we put together a minute ago, I just put the residual valve on and put the 4AN on the other side of it. And as you can tell, it does say right there on the inlet side, MC for master cylinder. So we're still good. So now we're gonna go ahead and shove this hard line back through. All right, guys, so I'm thinking I'm gonna mount this line lock somewhere in this general area. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill me a hole. I'm just gonna mount it with some 1/4-20 hardware, so I don't need to go super big with the holes. Alright guys, I came back out here to show y'all once I tightened everything up what it finished like, and I can't leave well enough alone, so here's what we got now. I did not like the way the hoses were routed. I did not like the kinks in them or anything like that, so I changed it up. So now I have the soft lines coming off, and they do come down. And they're kind of uniform. Come around and go to the proportional valve, like so. And then I changed up the way the line lock was, and I put the 90 down here with the little loop going up. And that's how the rear line's coming up, and it's now supported with an 8L clamp. And those guys are both clamped there. And they go there. So I think it looks a whole lot better and more uniform. Y'all will have to let me know if I just need to leave well enough alone. Keep changing stuff up, I know, but I'm just really picky about stuff at times, and I really think that this looks and made for a very, very clean install. Again, y'all let me know what y'all think, and we'll finish up the front brakes next time. Alright guys, that'll be it.